Hi guys, how's it going? It's Sergeant Mushroom 92 here again. Now, as you can tell by the video title, we're looking at the 25 TP today and checking whether or not 11 more TPs make it worth it. Now, first of all, let me show you this. Now, this is the almost fully upgraded version of the 25 TP. Now, spoilers, this is the way I would recommend that you play this tank. Even just after you get it, I would recommend to free XP your way through the tracks, through the turret, through the second gun, and onto the third gun. But first, let me explain why. So the tank has 3 equipable guns: the 40mm Auto Boforsa, the 75mm WZ 1897, and the 75mm WZ 3637. Let's take a look at them. Now you might think that that 40mm Bofors gun sounds familiar, and it is, because that is the mid gun from the previous tank, the 14 TP. Is the 40mm Bofors with 4 shots in 2 bursts, 52mm of penetration and 50 alpha damage, 85 on its gold rounds. This gun is not great. I would not recommend to use this gun and play it stock. You can, and it's not as bad as the stock gun on the 14 TP, but for tier 5 games, and let's be honest, you're going to get into mostly tier 6 and 7 games because of the way the matchmaker works right now. You're going to struggle. And if you do choose to try and grind this gun out, you're going to need to take a lot of premium, so I would not recommend it. On top of that, you're starting to get into more sniping engagements, and you only have a 400 meter firing range. So let's get rid of that. Now the second gun, 75mm WZ 1897. Now, as the name suggests, this gun is from the 1890s. It's an artillery piece. Let me show you on the actual vehicle. It's a short, stubby artillery piece. It's much better than the stock gun though. And if you're not a huge fan of free XPing your way past things, or you don't have a lot of free XP, this wouldn't be a terrible gun to stick with. 98mm of penetration, immediately much better, and 110 alpha damage, which is the highest we've seen so far. 120mm on its premium rounds as well. So it's usable, but the main thing that brings this gun down, which is not listed on World of Tanks portal, but I'll show you on Tanks DG over here, is the shell velocity. This thing has abysmal shell velocity, which took me by surprise when I first used this gun. Which makes it very difficult to use and very difficult to fire at long distances with. Although you don't have a firing range limit, it's not a great gun to use. But it is usable, so you have to research it anyway, so you can use it if you would rather not free experience your way to the top gun, which is this one here. Pop it back on the vehicle. As you can see, this is a long, high velocity, which is important, 75mm gun. 135mm of penetration in standard rounds and 175 on its premium. Much, much better. Very good for a tier 5 medium, actually. And 135mm of alpha damage. It is quite worth getting this gun because, as you can see, it is used on the next vehicle. So, I mean, I would recommend it. It'll make your playtime with this vehicle much more enjoyable. That's the gun. Now, the stock turret, there's 2 turrets that are equipable on this tank. There's the upgraded one here, and the stock one here. Now, the stock turret is not great. Again, I would recommend grinding, skipping past that with free experience. And you have to if you want to get the better gun anyway. Not great armor, and it actually limits you to 8 degrees of gun depression, whereas with all of the guns, the upgraded turret will give you 10 degrees of gun depression. But most importantly, as you can see here, 80mm of front armor, which is not bad for a tier 5 tank, and this is the first sort of hint of armor that we're getting from this Polish heavy line. In terms of view range, as you can see, I still don't have a fully trained crew, but with some Smalex, or however you say that, and binocular telescope, I've managed to get it up to 432 meters view range. So not terrible, and I would recommend, again, binocular telescopes over coated optics because your base view range just is not high enough to make coated optics a viable choice. And again, as usual, I would recommend the medium caliber tank gun rammer and vents. So I've tried to do something a little bit different today because obviously I'm still figuring out how to do these videos. I want to try things out and see what people like. As always, leave any feedback in the comments below. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you not full gameplay videos, but actually just some clips of me playing this tank with each of the guns installed on it. Maybe give you some hints and tips on each of the guns and how you might want to use it. So yeah, but what I would say, just as a kind of off topic, just about the tech tree in general, with the way that the matchmaker and its template system is set right now, I would, if you're the sort of person that gets very frustrated at being bottom tier all the time, I would highly recommend not playing these tanks right now. Because there's such a high volume of them in the matchmaking system, you tend to find that you're bottom tier almost every time. And that can and will ruin some people's enjoyment. Sorry, this will cause frustration. It'll ruin your enjoyment of these vehicles, which they're good vehicles, especially when you've got this upgraded gun. So if you like the look of these tanks and you want to play them, but you're frustrated and it really gets you down when you're bottom tier, sorry, I would recommend holding off on playing these. If you don't care, then go for it. You can make it work. Anyway, let's get on to the videos. So this is my first battle in the 25 TP using the stock turret and gun, and as you can see, I'm totally overconfident in the vehicle, and I try to rush forward to get my gun into effect. But as you can see, I take a shot quite easily from that enemy tank. I move into cover, try to get shots onto the top of his turret, but the accuracy and the penetration just is not there. I take another shot and artillery finishes me off due to the weak rear and side armor. Next battle, still stock, is on the Minsk map, which is actually pretty good. Now, this time I play a bit more conservatively. I move up to the ridgeline here. At this point I didn't realize that it still only has 8 degrees of gun depression. As you can see, that puts me at a disadvantage right there. However, the penetration of this gun is still a super limiting factor. I tried to take advantage of the terrain collision there, but as you can see, the penetration and the accuracy after firing just lets me down. I can't even penetrate the side of a P43. That's just how bad this gun can be. Now, as I said, you can play this gun, the stock version of this tank, effectively, but what you basically need to do, and it sounds really bad, is you need to pick on all the little Polish light tanks that are about, like these 14 TPs. The Polish light tanks have next to no armor and you can easily cut through them, but they can cut through you too. So as you can see, I've found a 14 TP to make my waifu, and I get 3 shots into him easily because of his poor armor. But because he's got the same gun as me and I don't have that great armor either, he's able to put shots into me too. Comes around the corner, he gets another shot into me, but I managed to penetrate all 4 of my rounds and finish him off. At this point I thought that other 14 TP wasn't really paying attention to me, but he was, and he finishes me off. Ending my, I think, second battle in Minsk? Anyway, let's get up a gun and turret and see how it goes. So now I've upgraded my gun to the mid gun and the turret to the top turret. So we move into position here, and this is where we see the awful shell velocity.
Nope.
Now this took me by surprise, because I hadn't looked up in advance what the shell velocity of this gun was. It's not a short stubby gun like a derp gun usually is.
Nope.
So I just didn't expect the low shell velocity. Anyway, I miss a few shots there on the Crusader and the 14 TP on the enemy team, but having now not the knowledge of the low shell velocity, I'm able to think ahead and actually pre-aim or lead my shots a lot better. So I get back up around the corner in order to get my binocular telescope set up again. As you can see, it leads to a not bad view range, almost out to max. 413 meters if I remember correctly. So I'm just waiting here for the enemy to get spotted. We have won that corner, we do have tank spotting. And this was a happy moment. I missed that first shot there, but I'm actually able to penetrate the sides of tanks, which was a fantastic feeling. But as you can see, the shell velocity was so slow there that I missed the tank completely and hit Matilda. But it's a great feeling to finally be able to penetrate tier 6 tanks. I bounce one there, and what I tried to do here, I fire a couple shots. I tried to take advantage of my high trajectory of the shell to try and loop in and normalize the angle on his front plate, which in theory should be able to penetrate. However, the auto range detection seemed to mess up there. I blind fire on the Matilda and I do hit him. As you can see, the shell just disappeared rather than kicking up a bunch of dirt. And that's pretty much all the exciting stuff that happened in this game. You just need to remember to take into consideration the low shell velocity. That's the main takeaway from this gun, but it is usable. So on to the last clip here, and I've upgraded to the top gun. I get spotted going into position here, but this is what you really need to be doing with this tank, especially in these bottom tier games, as is going to often be the case. I set up behind the bushes. As you can see, I cannot see through them, so I should be hidden. However, with the tall silhouette of this vehicle, you can get spotted through bushes, so you need to take that into account as well. So with this, I'm able to much easier and accurately put shells into the target. This has a much better shell velocity than the mid gun. So as you can see, I'm able to consistently get damage out. And as I just mentioned there, I got spotted and I got hit. And that is likely because of the tall vehicle. I was seen above the bushes. So that's something that you really need to take into account and consideration when you're using this vehicle. But as I say, for the most part, because you're going to be in bottom tier games, you need to be playing this basically a sniper role. Because you're such a big vehicle, you can't run around the sides of enemies. I mean, you can try, but you're just going to get hit. So in conclusion, I would say that the 25 TP is a perfectly usable tier 5 medium tank with a very decent gun, especially when obviously you've unlocked the top gun. As I've said throughout the video, I would highly recommend to free experience your way through the Trax turret and both guns. And this is purely just because it makes it a much more enjoyable experience. As I've said as well though, if you're not a fan of free experiencing through vehicles, it is usable. However, it may not be as enjoyable as it would otherwise. But if we have to compromise, the mid gun is fine. You do just have to get used to that ridiculously low shell velocity. But it is a breath of fresh air compared to some of the other guns in this tech tree so far. There are a couple of other modules that I haven't touched on, and that's the radio and the engine. And that's because I don't really feel that they're necessary, like with a lot of the vehicles in the Polish tech tree so far. The engine, I really don't agree that is necessary. As you've seen from these gameplay clips, I have been using the stock engine, and I feel that the vehicle has been perfectly maneuverable enough as is. So I think it would be just a bit overkill to waste the experience on the engine. And the radio, I don't really care too much for radios at these lower tiers. I don't think that they're really that important, so I'm not going to bother wasting the experience on it. As some of you will be aware, I do also do streaming. I will be streaming about tonight at about 7 o'clock British Summer Time. I'll be streaming The Witcher 3, which was kindly provided to me by Archangel Pod, my Twitch moderator, because he's an overly generous bastard. So I'll be playing that. So please feel free to come check me out on that. I'd really appreciate it. Other than that, as always, if you've enjoyed the video, thank you very much for watching. Feel free to subscribe to see more content like this. I am focusing right now on the Polish tech tree because it's new and fresh, especially some of the lower tiers because nobody tends to really cover that. It tends to be the higher tier vehicles. so I want to show some focus for these vehicles. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and leave a comment with any feedback that you might have. I would appreciate any feedback. I'm still new to making videos like this, and although I'm gaining experience with every video that I do, I would still appreciate any feedback that anyone has to give. And certainly if there's something that you didn't like about the video, if you didn't like this format, or whatever it may be, leave a dislike and leave a comment to explain what it was, and I'll definitely take that feedback on board. But as always, folks, I hope you really enjoyed this video, and as always, have a great day.